Fiber. Huh. What is it good for? Absolutely everything. Everything from weight loss to lowering your risk of heart disease. What is it that you need to know? You're about to find out as we tackle fiber from A to Z on the exam room.
What else is fiber good for?
So we mentioned the cholesterol
Everything.
levels. It really, I mean, I don't want to say, but yeah. So it does help lower cholesterol. It helps lower blood pressure. And again, part of that's because it's found with other things like potassium that help lower blood pressure. Helps you with weight control. It can help, as we've mentioned, reduce the risk of all kinds of chronic diseases, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain types of cancer. So again, there's really nothing that fiber can't do, as it turns out.
Dr. Kaliova's study was looking at beef burgers, red meat, and we know that has long been associated with colorectal cancer. Say you bump up your fiber consumption there. I assume that you can then flip that script.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So high fiber diets have been found to have been linked to a lower risk of colorectal cancer. Mm-hmm. And in this one, there was one study published in Gastroenterology, and researchers actually did a meta-analysis, so a study of other studies. They looked at 20 different studies analyzing fiber and the risk of colorectal polyps. Mm-hmm. Say that 3 times fast. So those are basically little abnormal growths. They're not cancer, but they're kind of on their way to being colon cancer.
Right.
And they found that people who ate the most fiber had a 28% lower risk of having those polyps.
Really?
Really.
That's better than 1 in 4. That's pretty strong.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a reduction in risk.
Yeah.
So it's, I think I'll keep eating my high fiber foods. Thank you.
I would imagine so. Maybe.
So, and they actually did sort of a dose response analysis, and they found that every 10 grams of dietary fiber that someone adds to their diet cut the likelihood of having a polyp. Again, those are those precancerous growths by about 9%.
I would imagine, too, that the risk of developing a polyp would drop if you eliminate meat from the diet altogether as well. So if you do that, plus you boost your fiber, I think, man, you're setting yourself up
your
to
colon's
be
going to be happy.
In as best a shape as possible. Your colon will be happy.
Yeah.
One of the communities that really tends to struggle, unfortunately, with a high prevalence of colorectal cancer is the African American community. And I know that there has been some research done that looks specifically at African Americans and high fiber or low fiber diets.
Yeah, so some really fascinating research published in the journal Nature Communications. And researchers have known for a long time, again, like you said, that rates of colon cancer are higher in African American men. What's interesting is they're actually much lower, particularly than the U.S. average, in African men who are living in rural South Africa. And some of the, again, genetically, it's not really a gene issue. These are still very different populations, but more importantly, they're eating extremely different diets.
Right.
So the diet in rural South Africa is much higher in fiber. It's much lower in fat. So what researchers did was they tracked the typical diets of 20 African American men and 20 African men, again, living in rural South Africa. And they also looked at their risks for colon cancer. And they did a bunch of different tests, looking at the bugs living in their gastrointestinal tract, the bacteria living there, the amount of cell growth and the kind of cell growth that you don't want. So they looked at that at baseline. And then they took these 2 groups, so African American men eating the sort of standard American diet and these African men living in rural South Africa, and they switched their diets for 2 weeks. And what they found in that 2 weeks was basically that their risk profiles for colorectal cancer switched.
Wow.
So it's pretty impressive stuff. They think, there are multiple reasons for this, but they think it was changes in, decreasing animal protein and increasing carbohydrate and fiber intake, and in particular the effects that had on their gut bacteria that may be partly responsible for the changes they saw.
That's interesting. And that's something also that hits really close to home in the Washington area, where we see in certain sections of the city where the rate is even astronomically higher. So if you're in a more affluent area, you're going to see rates that are more in line with the national average. Whereas if you go to these underserved communities, you're going to see like an explosion in the rates of colorectal cancer, like eye-opening, jaw-dropping, mind-blowing just explosion increases surge in colorectal cancer cases.
Yeah, it's
really
upsetting.
remarkable. It is upsetting.
It really is, because again, it's a lot of it's just like having access to good, healthy foods. It can make a life or death difference in this case.
I would love to do a show on food deserts and things like that.
Yes.
That is definitely a topic that needs to be addressed. Let's talk about women for a second and the risk of breast cancer and the link there with fiber. I know that that's something that I'm sure that you've studied particularly
I certainly have.
closely given your own history.
And something probably most people don't think about.
Right.
So you would think, okay, well, colon cancer and fiber, that makes sense because you're eating. But actually, it makes a difference with breast cancer risk. And again, this is a big one for moms out there. If you have daughters, it actually makes a difference how much fiber they are eating during their their preteen and teen years. That's actually important to their future risk of breast cancer. So it turns out that, again, a high fiber diet during adolescence has been linked to a lower breast cancer risk. Now, that was actually according to a study published in the journal Pediatrics, and it was part of the Nurses' Health Study too. What they did was they asked women they monitored their current fiber intakes and followed them over time. They also asked them about their fiber intake and the kind of food they ate when they were in their adolescent years. And what they found was that the women who ate the most fiber during adolescence and early adulthood lowered their risk for breast cancer later in life compared to those who ate the least fiber back in those formative years. And that's important because that's when breast tissue is forming and maturing.
Right.
And so you need to have a healthier diet. Now, there's sort of the question, well, why does that work, right?
Fair question.
Right. So we discussed that soluble fiber in particular helps to absorb excess cholesterol and steroid hormones. And one of those steroid hormones is estrogen.
Wow.
So you want to have healthy, lower estrogen levels, particularly in those reproductive years. You don't want it too high because high estrogen is linked to an increased risk of breast cancer.
Interesting.
And actually, most breast cancer tumors are actually their growth is fueled by estrogen. So again, it's something where you do want to have just enough, but by eating a fiber-rich diet, you're going to have the right amount and get rid of the rest.
Good information.
I know.
All right. Here's something that I have struggled with since I think I was clinically diagnosed as depressed in maybe the 6th or 7th grade, somewhere in that ballpark.
Can we stop one more thing?
Breathe,
Can I add one thing? Boop, back up. Okay. So I just want to really quick add that it's not just about the developmental years. So if you're like, wow, I ate the sort of standard American diet as a kid, like, is that, is it done? Like, do I have anything I can do now? It does make a difference to still increase fiber intake in your older adult years as well. So again, there was another study. They looked at over 11,000 women who were postmenopausal, so way past those developmental years, and found that those who were eating the most fiber, and again, we're looking at about 26 grams per day on average. So not as much as we recommend, but still way better than the typical American is doing. Those women were getting 42%, though they had a 42% lower risk of developing breast cancer.
Holy moly.
So you still have control even if you're, in those postmenopausal years. Okay, just wanted to make sure that women knew it wasn't just a matter of what you did when you were younger, but you can still do something about it now.
Interesting.
Again, not a magic bullet, but can help reduce risk.
And I mean, I think that goes to the overall theme of the plant-based diet.
Yep.
It's not a cure-all.
No, it's definitely not, but it does a pretty amazing job.
That's why we always say lower the risk of.
Yes, correct.
Pay close attention to the verbiage. All right, back to where I was going originally. Diagnosed as clinically depressed in the 6th or 7th grade. Had no idea that a lot of that was likely attributable to what it was that I was eating.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about burgers, veggie and regular hamburgers. One could be considered like the happy pill for... and the other, if you take it, will be the downer, if you will.
Kind of, yeah.
And so, it's really interesting to me that the veggie option with more fiber can actually alter and improve your mood.
Yeah, and there's science that backs this up. So it turns out that a high fiber intake, and again, this is not really from supplements, this is from foods that naturally contain fiber, so those whole plant foods, that can actually help reduce the risk for symptoms of depression. So this is a study published in Nutrition, and researchers looked at data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, known amongst dietitians as NHANES. Yeah, and they looked at people's diet records, so people recorded what they ate, and then they also looked at the symptoms that they had recorded on questionnaires about depression. And what they found was that those who ate 21 grams of total fiber per day at least, were less likely to exhibit depressive symptoms compared with those who consumed less fiber.
Interesting.
So it really does pay. It may even pay in terms of your happiness and well-being to go ahead and eat plant foods that are naturally rich in fiber to bump up those fiber levels.
So if you think of fiber in terms of being that scrubber that takes things out of your system, think of fiber scrubbing the unhappiness from your soul.
You're I don't know if we have data to support that, but but I like where you're going.
Thank you. But I will say, even after I'd lost the weight, like that was still something that that I was struggling with, and I can't say 1,000% that I'm over the depressive hill, as it were. But I will say 1,001% that the plant-based diet generally much happier person overall. Like it's not
agreed.
even close.
Oh yeah, and I think there are multiple reasons for that. Part of it is the fiber, and I will say this: fiber does feed the good bugs in your gut, so the good gut bacteria. And there is some, your gut actually produces a lot of your body's serotonin. So there is some evidence that what you're feeding your gut bacteria can directly affect your mood. It can also even affect weight, by the way. So it's, you're not just eating fiber and getting rid of the bad stuff. You're also actively nurturing the good bacteria in your gut.
Let's talk about the big one now, though, because everybody's concerned about weight. That is the end all be all.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I understand. I do. I really do. It's linked with health issues, and it's just a lot of us just want to fit those pants that we've had for a while and may have outgrown a little bit. Yeah. So, it happens. Yeah. So that's why, again, most people are going on a diet not to prevent their risk of heart disease in 20 years. They're doing it because they want to fit in that pair of pants right now. I mean, let's just be honest.
Well said. But fiber can help being able to button them jeans.
So we've talked about all the chronic diseases that come along with this. But yeah, in terms of weight management, absolutely. So I'm sure you talked about this with Hannah, with Dr. Kaliova, about the fact that fiber can trigger the stretch receptors in your stomach and help you feel full, but it does more than that. We also talked about it giving you a steadier rise and fall in blood sugar because it sort of slows down the absorption of the carbohydrates. But there are certain types of fiber called prebiotics. So not probiotics, which are the good bacteria that you can take in a pill. Prebiotics. So this is what I consider to be do-it-yourself probiotics, because all you do is you eat healthy fiber and then you make your own probiotics in your gut by feeding the good guys down there.
How about that?
Right. And so those prebiotic fibers, again, they're not just helping to keep you regular. They actually will nourish the bugs that produce substances that then nourish your cells that line your intestinal tract. And that's a good thing because those cells will then are then triggered to produce hormones that actually diminish appetite and improve satiety, or the feeling of being full or comfortable or sated.
Yep.
So pretty cool.
Yep.
The fiber can do that.
That's really what was kind of at the crux of the study we were talking about.
It's just so neat.
Like which burger is going to keep you feeling more full for the greatest length of time. And it was the veggie burger, no question.
And I always used to think, it's just because it's literally taking up space in your stomach, and the answer is no. It's then going and feeding the good bacteria, which talk to your own cells, which talk to the rest of your body. It's incredible.
If you like what you just saw, like what you just heard, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Leave a nice comment below. And for the full interview with Lee, go ahead and subscribe to the Exam Room Podcast by the Physicians Committee. New episodes each and every Wednesday, wherever the finest podcasts are available.